Here we go. Hi,
Hey,
everybody. Okay, we have a long story, so we're starting without any riffraff here.
riffraff. All right. All right. No riffraff. So this is the story for the week from the Gospel of Luke. They arrived at the country of the Gerasenes, opposite Galilee. And when he stepped out of the boat, a man of the city who had demons met him. For he hadn't worn clothes for a long time. And he did not live in a house, but lived in the tombs. And when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet and shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you have to do with us, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, by God, do not torment me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of the man, you evil spirit." And for it had often seized him, and he was kept under guard and was bound with chains and shackles, but the chains and the bonds he broke apart, and the demon would drive him out into the wilds. And Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. And they began to beg Jesus not to order them to go back into the abyss. Now there was a large herd of swine feeding on the hillside. And they began to ask Jesus to let them enter the swine. And he gave them permission. So the unclean spirits came out of the man and entered into the swine, and the herd of swine rushed down the steep hillside into the lake. And they drowned. When the swineherds saw what had happened, they ran off and told it in the city and in the country, and people came out to see what had happened. And when they came to Jesus, they saw the man from whom the demons had gone sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. They were afraid. And those who had seen it told how the man who was possessed had been healed. And all the people of the whole region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to please leave. So Jesus got into the boat and returned. And the man from whom the demons had gone out begged him to go along with him. But Jesus sent him away and said to him, "Go to your home and tell and declare how much God has done for you." So the man went away, and he told the story throughout the whole city about how much Jesus had done for him.
All right, there you have it. Jesus and the Gerasene demoniac, which makes me think of this great T-shirt I have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the kerosene demoniac, right?
Right.
I have a whole slew of questions here. They're kind of a little bit random, but before I get into those, I just want to kind of reminisce this story from the Gospel of Mark. And this is pretty close to Mark's version, but you and I, worked together with the American Bible Society to produce this incredible video, kind of music video portrayal of the story that we called, that was I mean, you were the leader of the project. I was just a helper, but Out of the Tombs, really a powerful video that was meant to appeal to teenagers, I think. Is that correct?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and ABS decided it was a little bit too strong, I guess. And so I don't think it ever got very widely distributed, which is a shame because it's really a powerful video. And anyway, I haven't Googled to see if that's on any place on like YouTube or so. I think I might do that. Out of the Tombs.
Yeah, that's a good
All right,
idea.
now, so that was Mark. Was it kind of hard to learn the Luke version, or?
Well, yes, it was, because there were a lot of verbal similarities, but also a lot of differences. And so keeping it straight, given that I knew that story from Mark very well, yeah, it was a big adjustment. I had a hard time learning Luke's version. I like it. I can see what he was trying to do.
Yeah.
It's better Greek, and there are things about it that are, I don't know, cleaner.
Well, where does it come in the context of the Gospel of Luke?
Well, it comes after the birth narrative and after the story of his baptism, and then his first sermon, where he identifies that the kingdom of God and the coming of the kingdom of God and its blessings will be not just for Israelites, but also for Gentiles, for like people like the widow of Zarephath and Naaman, the general of the Syrian army. And then that theme of Jesus' ministry to the Gentiles is developed first then in his Sermon on the Plain, when he talks about loving your enemies. And
because the Gentiles were the enemies of his
yes,
people?
yeah, the Romans, that was another name for the Romans, and
Okay.
for all those who weren't Israelites, were the others, the Gentiles, the nations, are the various translations of that word. And then Jesus heals the servant of a centurion, an officer in the Roman army.
Yeah, talk about an enemy.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So that's chapter 7, right?
Right.
Okay.
So that's just before this story.
Okay.
And so this is the most graphic instance, and it's graphic in part because it is so clearly identified as Jesus' ministry and caring about and fighting unclean spirits that are present in Gentiles. And so.
Right. So it starts off with a notice of the setting. They, I guess, so Jesus and his disciples had arrived in country of the Gerasenes,
Right.
Opposite of Galilee. So who were the Gerasenes? I guess is the land called, well, in Mark it's called the Decapolis, the 10 cities, but that's not really referenced here, is it?
Right, but it was one of the 10 cities.
It was one of the 10 cities.
One of the Decapolis.
So Gerasa, is that how we say it?
Gerasa.
Gerasa and the Gerasenes. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And then let's see. Well, so this person comes and yells out at the top of his voice.
Yeah. Well, this is grist for the mill of performance criticism that the story was told. And so Mark, or Luke in this case, gives explicit instructions about how loud this is to be. It's to be at the top of the storyteller's voice, as shouting as loud as you can, and then you get caught in your throat. And but that's a clear indication of what Luke had in mind. It's an instruction, stage
Stage
storytelling
directions.
instructions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you have this, he's bound with shackles and chains. I think that's in Mark as well. It's a great kind of powerful image. But then now this is different than in Mark. It says the demon would drive him into the wilds.
Yeah.
What are the wilds?
Well, they were out in the wilderness.
Okay.
So the wilds was short for the wilderness, and there's a lot of wilderness in between the further south of the Sea of Galilee, between the west bank and the east bank of the Jordan. It's in the area that is now the country of Jordan.
Yeah. So, I mean, this guy, well, it says he didn't live in a house. He lived in the tombs, and then he was driven into the wilds. So
Yeah,
he had
the wild man.
he had a rough situation going on here.
He was crazy.
And Jesus asks his name. Why does Jesus ask his name, by the way?
If you know the name of a demon, you have power over it.
Oh.
And so to know the name of a demon was then an exercise of power. And the
Okay.
fact that the demon told him was itself a sign that the
Kind of a
demon
sign.
recognized that he had more power.
Right. Sort of sign of
He was
submission
obedient.
almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it says his name is Legion. What's the significance of that?
Well, the Legion is the name of the basic military division of the Roman army. So it is the classic description of the enemy. So the Legion was a legion of evil spirits, of unclean spirits.
Was it
that
100?
drove
Was it
the
100?
Roman army?
Was it 100 soldiers or? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, century. So a centurion was responsible for 100 soldiers.
That'd be Legion. Okay. And so there were that many demons in him. He was seriously possessed.
So the Legion would have many centuries, many divisions. So it was this naming it the Legion was to name especially in the aftermath of the Jewish-Roman War and the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple by the legions of Rome. It's in a classic description of the unclean spirit that is the enemy.
Yeah, so it's kind of demonizing the enemy, literally. Yeah, well, I don't know that we still believe in demons as strongly as folks did then. How might we understand this if that's not really part of our belief system?
Right. Well, some of what they called demon possession is what we would call mental illness. And people who were in one way or another, crazy. But it means more than mental illness in the context of the ancient world, because this was the fundamental structure of apocalyptic, that there were good angels and bad angels who did battle in the heavens, and then that was reflected in what happened on the earth. And so the demons were instrumentalities of spiritual powers.
Okay, so after this multiplicity of demons names itself as Legion, then it says it begs Jesus. There's a lot of begging that goes on in the story, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the first begging is that Legion begs Jesus not to send them into the abyss. Another kind of powerful word like wilds. What was the abyss? How did people understand that?
Yeah, it was a description of the underworld. The abyss was the region of hell, of Hades, and so it was a description of where demons lived. And these demons had gotten out, and they begged Jesus not to send them back into the abyss.
So Jesus doesn't send them into the abyss. Jesus sends them into this herd of swine. It's kind of the next
Right.
section of the story. And
So he has mercy on the demons.
he does. Okay, except I don't know how merciful it is. They all rush down the hillside and they're drowned in the sea. How we, are we, with all our sensibilities about animal, not engaging in animal cruelty, is this a problem for us? How would first century Judeans listening to the story of Luke respond to what happened with the pigs in the sea and all of that?
Pork, pigs, swine were unclean animals, and that was supremely the case in the ancient world, in the ancient Near East, where it was dry, and so the pigs had to keep their skin moist, and the only liquid that was available was their own piss, and so they would roll around in the dirt that they made wet with their piss, and so they stank, and they were clearly unclean, but they were unclean in more senses than just that they were dirty and stank. They were unclean and that they were polluted. They were manifestations of uncleanness, like demons were unclean spirits.
Mm-hmm.
So unclean spirits belonged in unclean animals.
Now, what about the sea? Why being drowned in the sea? Is that how would, again, first century hearers respond to that? What would be the connections?
The connections were that this was great, that we were rid of these unclean animals and that they had all been drowned. It was better than going into the abyss for the demons, but it was it was Jesus exercising authority over the powers of uncleanness, of evil.
As I recall, out of the tombs, working on that, part of the connection was, now I'm thinking of that, the drowned in the sea, it might have brought to mind the Hebrews escaping slavery in Egypt and crossing the Red Sea and
being delivered from the water.
Being delivered from the chariots and the Egyptians who drowned in the sea, who were, the Egyptians who were chasing them, going to take them back to slavery or kill them, and that they were all drowned in the sea.
Right.
Same
phrase.
Yeah.
Same idea.
Right.
Yep.
Yep. So Jesus casts out these 100 demons or whatever, legion. Was he an exorcist? When I was a young adult, there was this movie that came out, The Exorcist, so that kind of comes to mind. But was he an exorcist, and how did people think about exorcists back then? The movie The Exorcist wasn't that was kind of a horror movie. What would that have meant to people for him to be able to do this?
It was a sign of his power over the powers of evil. And so his exorcisms were the exercise of his authority as one who had power over evil spirits. And what this reflected was the apocalyptic worldview of the battle between the powers of good and evil, and that Jesus exercised his power over the powers of evil to save things, to save, in this case, the Gerasene demoniac. So he was one who acted on behalf of the powers of the kingdom of God.
Okay. Then the last part of the story is about the response of those who witnessed what had happened. So the swineherds go and they bring people here and they see this man who'd been possessed. He's no longer possessed. He's clothed. He's in his right mind. but they are afraid. They're very afraid, and they beg Jesus to leave. So that's one response. Then the
Right.
other one is that the man who had been possessed demons begs to go with. He begs too, but he begs to stay with Jesus. And instead, Jesus sends him home and instructs him to tell people what God had done for him, kind of be a witness and evangelist. But he says what Jesus had done for him. I mean, he does do that, but he talks about Jesus, not so much about God. Anyway, why all these different responses to what had happened?
They were afraid because they saw the power of Jesus. And when those powers were unleashed, they didn't know where it was going to go. So they were afraid of the demons being cast out. So the demons could be free floating around and possess people, even though it looked as if they had, gone into the pigs. They were afraid because this was beyond their control, and because Jesus was an alien to them. So they were afraid that he would use his power for no good.
Oh, so the fact that that's interesting, that Jesus sent the man back to bear witness to what had happened might have been so that they would have a different idea, both about God. That's who he said to talk about, but also about Jesus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, to wind up here, what are the implications of this story for ministries of peace and justice?
Jesus in this story is an agent of the powers of justice and peace. And so he brings peace in the midst of this chaotic situation and this man who was possessed by powers of chaos. And so Jesus uses his power for good. And when we identify the presence of evil spirits, this story is a story to remember in relation to how Jesus dealt with that. And it was to cast out these evil spirits and to act on behalf of the powers of the kingdom of God and the powers of justice. And in this case, what he does is to bring peace to this man who was possessed by demons.
And also to the community, because the community was having to deal with this man all the time, trying to shackle him and chain him, keep him from destroying stuff and whatever all crazy things he was doing. So
running around naked, sleeping among the tombs.
Yeah.
So they had a major problem. So Jesus acts as a model of strong action in relation to the powers of the kingdom of God.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm not going to ask for last words because it's a long story. We've talked about it a long time. Just want to say goodbye. Say goodbye, Tom.
Okay, bye-bye. Have a great week.
Have a good week, everybody. Bless you all. And chase out those demons.